thank everybody for the opportunity to speak before you tonight. Count it an honor and a privilege. I want us all to think back on this previous year. I want us to think about the hardest time that we have went through. The hardest time in this year. And then after we go through this lesson, I want us to see if we use the biblical outline and the plan that God has set forth for trials and tribulations. And then, if the Lord wills for us to get through this next year, 2025, the next trial you have, use this plan that God has set forth and see how much better it makes that trial and see how much more beneficial it is. Let's start with John 16, verse 33. Jesus says, "These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world." Jesus is speaking to his disciples before his death. He says, you will have tribulation. Brethren, this is the same for us. We are going to go through a hard time in our life. So the question is, what do we do? What do we do when we go through this hard time? 1 Corinthians 10, verse 13, it says, "There have no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape." This is speaking of temptation right here. There's a difference in temptation and trial. A temptation is when the devil tempts you, when you're tempted to do a sin. A trial is when you go through a tough time in your life, a hard time. So Paul speaks of a temptation right here, but notice, you think back to Job. The devil's job, what he was trying to do with Job, is to get him to sin by using a trial. So when we read this verse, it can apply to trials as well, because a lot of times we are tempted to sin when we go through a trial. So notice, God's not going to allow us to go through a temptation that's too hard for us to bear. We will always be able to get through it. God has confidence in us that we can get through it. Isn't that beautiful? God has confidence in his people that we can get through anything, that we can get through a trial. Philippians 4, verse 13, "I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me." Says I can do anything. I can do all things. How? Through Christ. Why? Because Christ is the one who strengthens me. When we go through a trial, we can get through it because Christ is the one who strengthens us. 1 Peter 5, verse 7 says, "Casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you." Brethren, do not go through a trial alone. You have your Father in heaven that you can rely on. Do not go through it alone. Cast your care upon him. The last part of this verse, "For he careth for you." The Creator that created the world cares for each and every one of us. So give it to him like he's your Father. He is your Father. John 16, verse 33. We read this. I want to read it again. "These things are spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." Jesus says, be of good cheer. John chapter 1, verse 2 says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations." James says, count it all joy. Romans chapter 5, verse 3, Paul says, "And not only so, but we glory in tribulations, also knowing that tribulation worketh patience." We see glory, be of good cheer, and be joyful. Brethren, why would we want to be joyful when we go through a tribulation? Why would we want to be joyful? Well, we're going to find out. We're going to look to the Bible and we're going to see why to be joyful. James chapter 1, verses 3 through 4, it says, "Knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience, but let patience have a perfect work, that ye may be ready, you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing." Faith, the trying of your faith, worketh patience. A lot of times when we speak about trials and tribulations, we say it brings forth patience. It brings forth patience. And that is certainly true. It increases your patience tremendously. But it also brings forth, you then lack nothing as a Christian. If you use trials in the right way, you would then lack nothing as a Christian. You'll be perfect and entire. Romans 5, verses 3 through 5, it says, "And not only so, but we glory in tribulations, also knowing that the tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope, and hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost, which is given unto us. There's a process in this verse. When we go through a tribulation, we have to have patience to get through it. And like we said in James, it's going to increase your patience. But once you have that patience to get through the trial, you then have more experience. What do you have experience in? You have experience not only in the trial that you went through, but also as a Christian. You grew as a Christian. You have more experience and you can help others with that same exact thing. So patience, experience, and then hope. Once you have that patience to get through the trial, you have then more experience. And then once you have those things, you have more hope that you can make it to heaven and then that you will get through the trials of this life. As 1 Corinthians 3 talks about the fire, going day by day, the trials, the hard times, you can get through it. You have that hope that you can make it to heaven. Brethren, when we go through a trial, don't look at it as a bad thing. The Bible teaches it is a wonderful thing to go through a trial. It is wonderful because it will increase your strength. So let's answer the question that I asked earlier. Why are we joyful when we go through this? Because it's going to give us all these things. It's going to help us be stronger. It's going to help us be perfect and entire, lacking nothing. Increase our patience. So when you look at a trial, the next time you have a trial come to you, look at it as being joyful when you see that come to you. Being joyful and know that it can strengthen you as a Christian. Let's be ready for the next trial. Thank you, brother.